Absolutely. I'll tell you a story that sort of explains what I mean by radical candor in a pretty quick way about a time when my boss criticized me. It was shortly after I had joined Google, and I had to give a presentation to Google's founders and the CEO. And I walked into the room, and there is Sergey on a treadmill in toe shoes. And there is Eric so deep in his computer, it's like his brain has been plugged in to the computer. And like any normal person in this situation, I felt a little bit nervous. How in the world was I supposed to get these people's attention? Happily, the AdSense business was on fire. And when I said how many new AdSense publishers we had added in the last month, Eric's head pops up out of his computer. He says, "What did you say? What do you need? How can I help? Do you need more marketing dollars? Do you need more engineers?" So I'm feeling like the meeting went pretty well. In fact, I'm kind of feeling like a genius. and and as I left the meeting, I passed by my boss, who was Sheryl Sandberg, and I was expecting a pat on the back or a high five or something like that. And instead, Sheryl says to me, "Why don't you walk back to my office with me?" And I think, oh boy, I thought I did so well, but I screwed something up, and I'm sure I'm about to hear about it. And Cheryl started out by telling me the things that had gone well in the meeting, not in a feedback sandwich. There's another term for that. I don't
Oh,
know
yeah,
how
yeah,
you'll
yeah.
stop cursing on your podcast, but not in a feedback sandwich kind of way, but actually genuinely telling me some good things that had happened. And of course, though, I wasn't really listening because all I really wanted to hear about was what I had screwed up. And eventually, Cheryl said, "You said a lot in there. Were you aware of it?" And now I breathed a huge sigh of relief because I think if that's all I've done wrong, it doesn't really matter. And I make this kind of brush off gesture with my hand. I said, "Yeah, no, it's a verbal tick. It's no big deal, really." And then Cheryl said, "I know a really good speech coach. I bet Google would pay for it. Would you like an introduction?" And I make this brush off gesture again. I said, "I'm busy. Didn't you hear about all those new AdSense customers?" And she stopped. She looked right at me and she said, "When you say every third word, it makes you sound stupid." Now she has my full attention. And some people would say it was mean of Cheryl to say that I sounded stupid, but in fact, it was the kindest thing she could possibly have done for me at that moment in my career. And she wouldn't have said it that way to somebody else. So radical candor is sort of it's not an absolute. It's relative depending on who you're talking to. She wouldn't have said that to the other people who work for her, but I'm maybe a little more stubborn than most. So that was what those were the words she had to use in order to get through to me. And if she hadn't said it to me just that way, I wouldn't have gone to see the speech coach and had one of life's painful experiences of watching myself on video and and realizing that she was not exaggerating. I really did say every third word. And this was really surprising to me because I had been giving presentations my whole career. I had raised millions of dollars for a startup giving presentations. I thought I was pretty good at it. And this got me to thinking, why had nobody told me? It was sort of like I've been going through my whole career with a hunk of spinach in my teeth, and nobody had to tell me. I could have gotten it out if I knew it was there. And what was it about Cheryl that made it so seemingly easy for her to tell me? And I realized it really boils down to two things. The two dimensions of radical candor. The first is caring personally. Cheryl cared about each of the people who worked directly with her at a very human level. She cared about us not just as employees, but as human beings. But she didn't let her concern for our feelings get in the way of her willingness to challenge us really directly. So if we screwed up, we knew about it. And that was radical candor in a nutshell. Those two things. Now, it sounds really simple to be radically candid, but it's actually really, as we were talking before, it's really hard to be radically candid. And it's hard, I think, for two reasons. It's hard because along about the time we get our first job, we're 18, 19, 20 years old. We're right at that moment in our lives when our egos are extremely fragile, but our personas are beginning to solidify. And right at that moment, somebody comes along and says, "Be professional." And for an awful lot of us, that gets translated to mean leave your feelings, leave your true identity, leave your humanity, leave everything that's best of you at home
Hmm.
and come to work like some kind of robot. And you can't care personally if you're a robot. You have to be a fully fledged human being. So you've got to learn how to be more than just professional, to bring your whole self to work. So that's sort of why it's difficult on the care personally dimension. And then the challenge directly dimension is what I think of as the willing to piss people off dimension of radical candor. Unfortunately, love is not all you need. You also need this other thing. And Colin Powell said that leadership often is about being willing to piss people off. And so that unwillingness is much more deep seated even than the professional thing. I think that begins when we're 18 months old. We're just learning to talk. And we have a parent or a caregiver who says some version of, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. And now it's your job to say it. Congratulations. And that's hard. It's hard to undo training that's been pounded into your head since you learned to speak. So that's kind of why radical candor is important but hard.